Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are opening a file that, quite frankly, kept me up last night.
Oh, yeah.
It feels like we are standing on the edge of a cliff, looking at a landscape that is, I don't know, equal parts utopia and dystopia. We are talking about the elixir of life.
It does sound a bit like we've wandered into the fantasy section of the library, doesn't it? But, you're right to be losing sleep, or maybe gaining hope, because the science we are looking at today is very, very real.
It is. And to kick things off, I want to zoom in on something I found in the stack from Imperial College London.
Okay.
We see headlines all the time, right? Scientists cure aging, and usually I just scroll right past. But this one stopped me. They were working with lab mice, and they managed to extend their lifespan by nearly 25%.
That is the headline number, yes. But the how is what really matters here. I mean, did you catch the mechanism they were targeting?
I did, and I have to admit I had to look it up. They were targeting a protein called interleukin-11.
Exactly, IL-11. It's absolutely fascinating because in evolutionary terms, IL-11 was probably helpful when we were, a younger species. It helps with clotting and fighting certain infections early in life.
So it's good for you.
It's good for you at first.
Yeah.
But as we age, it turns into a villain. It drives inflammation. It causes fibrosis, which is basically the scarring of tissue.
Fibrosis, right.
It turns your organs into stiff, non-functional versions of themselves.
So it's a case of biology that helps you survive in the jungle at age 20, killing you in the suburbs at age 70.
That's a perfect way to put it. And in this study, they administered an antibody that essentially turned off IL-11 in these middle-aged mice. And we're talking about mice that were the equivalent of a 55-year-old human.
So not young mice.
Not at all. And the results weren't just that they lived 25% longer. It's that they stayed young.
What does that mean, though? What did that look like?
Well, their muscle mass was preserved. Their fur didn't go gray or patchy. They didn't get the cancer rates that you'd expect. They were, for all intents and purposes, frailty-free until the very end.
That is the part that just blows my mind. It's not just adding years, it's adding functional, healthy years.
It's adding life to the years.
Exactly. And of course, where there is a potential biological miracle, the checkbooks come out.
Oh, the heavy hitters are definitely involved.
We're seeing Jeff Bezos, Peter Thiel, Sam Altman. I mean, basically the billionaires club pouring literal billions into companies like Altos Labs and Retro Biosciences.
It's a massive investment wave.
There's this one company, Loyal, that caught my eye because they aren't even starting with humans. They're trying to extend the lives of big dogs, Great Danes, St. Bernards.
Which is a brilliant strategy, both emotionally and scientifically.
Yeah.
Well, think about it. If you can give someone 2 more healthy years with their beloved dog, you prove the concept in a much shorter time frame, and you win the public's heart. It's a powerful proof of concept. But, looking at all this investment, there is a distinct vibe of trying to hack death.
It feels like a race. It really does. But here is the pivot, and this is why I said it kept me up at night. I was imagining a world where this actually works.
Okay.
Let's say Retro Biosciences hands me a pill tomorrow, and they say, congrats, you're going to live to 120, and you'll feel like you're 50 until you're 118. My first reaction is, awesome.
Of course.
My second reaction is absolute terror.
Because of the math.
Because of the math. If science hands me an extra 30 or 40 years, who is paying for them? Can I possibly afford them? And more importantly, even if I'm physically okay, will I be destitute? Living to 120 sounds great until you realize you might spend the last 4 years eating cat food because your 401k ran out at age 85.
And that is the friction point. That is exactly where we are going to camp out today. We are looking at the intersection of 2 massive concepts, healthspan and wealthspan.
Right.
Because the old model, the one our parents and grandparents used, is completely broken. You know the one. Save for retirement, get the gold watch at 65, sit on the porch for 10 years, and then that's it. That model just collapses if the timeline stretches into triple digits.
Exactly. It's completely obsolete. So to navigate this, we are pulling from a really diverse stack of sources today. We have the book Die with Zero by Bill Perkins, which I have to say, it triggered my anxiety, but also made so much sense.
The challenging read for sure.
And we have these dense, heavy-hitting reports from the Milken Institute on the longevity equation, data from the NIH on the actual biologies of aging science, and market analysis on what they're calling the longevity economy, which is, get this, an $8 trillion beast.
It's a great mix because we have the hard science, the macroeconomic theory, and then the very personal, almost philosophical approach from Perkins.
So let's define the mission of this deep dive. We aren't just talking about how to live longer. We are talking about how to construct a life that can actually support living longer. We need to merge the health bucket and the money bucket.
We need to stop viewing them as separate departments of our life.
Yes.
Usually, people have a financial advisor for their money and a doctor for their body, and those two professionals never ever speak to each other. Today, we are going to force that conversation.
I love that image, the broker and the doctor in the same room. So let's start with the core framework. The sources, especially the Milken report, refer to the longevity equation. It breaks this down into a formula. Can you walk us through that?
Yeah, it's a conceptual formula, but it's incredibly powerful. They propose that longevity, which they call L, is roughly equal to health span, or H times wealth span, WP, and that whole thing is multiplied by the power of technology, T.
So L is approximately H times W to the power of T.
Exactly. $1 approximates H times W.
Okay, let's unpack the variables. H and W health span and wealth span. Why are they multiplying them? Why is it H times W and not just H plus W? That seems like a really important distinction.
This is the most critical insight in the entire report. In math, if you multiply two numbers and one of them is 0, what is the answer?
0.
Exactly. If you add them, a high score in one can sort of mask a failure in the other. You could have 100 in wealth and 0 in health and still have a score of 100.
Right, it averages out.
But in a multiplicative equation, they're completely dependent. Let's play that out. Imagine you have a wealth span of 100 out of 100. You are a billionaire. You have infinite resources. But your health span is 0. You are dead, or you are in a persistent vegetative state. What is your quality of life?
0. The money is absolutely useless.
Right. The utility of the wealth evaporates because the biological vessel required to experience it is broken. Now flip it. You are the healthiest 95-year-old on the planet. You have the arteries of a teenager.
Yeah.
You can run a marathon. But your wealth span is 0. You have no home, no food, no security. You are living on the street in a state of high cortisol and stress.
That life is miserable. And honestly, that stress is going to tank your health score pretty fast anyway.
Precisely.
Okay.
And that's why they are linked. The report highlights these feedback loops. If your wealth collapses, your health suffers immediately. You lose access to nutritious food. You lose access to preventative care. You suffer from chronic stress, which increases inflammation.
There's that IL-11 again.
Here it is again. It's all connected. And if your health collapses...
Your wealth just drains away. I mean, you can't work, so your income stops.
Right, income stocks.
And at the same time, your expenses just skyrocket because of medical bills and care needs.
It is a double-edged sword that slices your net worth to ribbons. It's a wealth-destroying event.
So the goal isn't just to max out one. You can't be the richest guy in the graveyard, and you can't be the healthiest guy under the bridge. You have to keep both lines high.
You have to square the curve. That's a term they use.
Explain that visual for us. Square the curve. What does that mean?
Imagine a graph where the horizontal axis is your age and the vertical axis is your quality of life, your health, your solvency, your engagement. In a typical modern life, that line starts to droop around age 50 or 60.
Yeah, I can picture that.
It's a slow, jagged decline. You get a little sick, you retire, your income drops, your knees give out. It's a slide.
A long, slow fade.
Squaring the curve means keeping that line high and flat, basically perfectly horizontal for as long as possible. Until age 90 or 95 or 100, you are healthy, you are engaged, you are wealthy, and then boom, you drop off the cliff at the very end.
That sounds a little aggressive, but I see the appeal. It's basically maximizing the good years and compressing the bad years into a tiny, tiny window at the very end.
That's it. And the Julius Baer report gives a name to that bad window. They call it the six-span.
Six-span! Ugh, it's such a gross word, but it's so accurate.
It is the period of lifespan in a state of disability, chronic disease, or dependency. And the tragedy of modern medicine, and this is a really important nuance, is that for the last 50 years, we have been very good at extending lifespan.
Just keeping the heart beating.
Exactly, keeping the heart beating. But we have not been nearly as good at extending health span. So we have inadvertently stretched the six-span.
We're keeping people alive in nursing homes for 10 years instead of 2.
Precisely, which is terrifying emotionally, but also looking at the financial side.
Yeah.
That is the wealth killer. The six-span is by far the most expensive part of life.
It creates a massive financial drain. So the longevity equation is really arguing that investing in health isn't just about feeling good. It's a financial risk management strategy.
100%.
Yeah.
By compressing the six-span, you protect the estate. You protect your wealth.
I want to touch on the ribbon of life metaphor from that Julius Baer source. I like this because it pushed back against that linear life path we talked about earlier.
It is a beautiful reframing. The three-stage life, learn, work, retire is so rigid.
It's a factory model
It
almost.
is. It assumes you learn everything you need to know by age 22. It assumes you can physically work nonstop until 65. And it assumes you want to do nothing after that. The ribbon of life suggests a continuous looping flow.
Meaning what exactly? You go back to school at 50, you
Yeah.
take a gap year at 40.
Exactly that. All of the above. If you are going to live to 100, you have to pace yourself differently. You might take a mini retirement at 35 to recharge or learn a new skill.
A sabbatical.
A sabbatical, yes. You might start a brand new career, they call it a second act or an encore career at age 60. The ribbon loops back on itself. It requires flexibility. You have to balance growth, resilience, and wealth across the whole timeline, not just stack it all up for the end.
It sounds incredibly liberating, but also expensive. I mean, taking a gap year at 40, that sounds like financial suicide to my inner saver.
And that is where the skepticism should kick in. It absolutely requires a different kind of financial planning. You aren't just saving for a lump sum at the end, you are saving for transition funds along the way.
Okay, that makes sense. Before we move off the equation, let's talk about T technology, the multiplier. We talked about the mice, but the Milken report had a specific take on this.
Yeah. Technology is the wild card. It's the exponent.
Mhm.
If T is high, meaning we have access to AI diagnostics, personalized genomics, wearable sensors that catch cancer at stage 0, then the connection between health and wealth becomes exponential.
So you get massive returns on your efforts.
Massive. A small investment in a new health tech could yield decades of healthy life.
But exponents work both ways.
Correct. And the report warns very seriously about the inequality gap. If T is only available to the wealthy, then we create a biological caste system.
Wow.
The rich don't just have nicer cars, they literally have better metabolisms and longer lives. The poor get the natural lifespan, and the rich get the technological lifespan.
That is a dystopian novel just waiting to be written. But let's put a pin in the societal collapse for a second and pivot to the personal strategy.
Good idea.
Because if we assume we are going to live longer, and we do need to manage this equation, we run into a major conflict with how we've been taught to handle money. And this is where Bill Perkins and Die with Zero come in.
This book is fascinating because it makes financial planners incredibly uncomfortable.
It made me uncomfortable. I read it and my palms were sweating. I've been drilled since I was 16. Save 20%. Compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. Never touch the principal. Perkins basically comes in and says, you're doing it all wrong.
He challenges the autopilot mindset of just accumulating forever. He introduces this concept of consumption smoothing. Now, this is actually a standard economic theory, but Perkins applies it very aggressively to lifestyle.
Okay, explain it to me like I'm 5, but also like I'm terrified of being broke.
Okay, imagine your capacity to enjoy money is a curve. When you're 20, your capacity to enjoy, say, $100 is incredibly high. You can sleep in a hostel, you can eat street food, your knees don't hurt, your dopamine receptors are firing on all cylinders. You can squeeze a lot of joy out of a single dollar.
That's absolutely true. A $20 pizza with friends at 20 was the peak of existence.
Right. Now imagine you are 90. You have $100. Or even $100,000.
Yeah.
Can you go backpacking through Europe?
No.
Can you eat the spicy street food? Probably not. Your energy is lower, your social circle might be smaller, the utility of that money has dropped dramatically.
I see where this is going.
Consumption smoothing argues that it's economically rational to move some of that spending from the low utility years, which is old age, to the high utility years, which are youth and middle age.
So don't eat instant noodles for 20 years just so you can be the richest person in the nursing home.
That is exactly it. Perkins argues that if you die with millions of dollars in the bank that you never touched, you didn't win. You failed. You effectively worked for free. You traded your life energy, all those hours at the office, for paper that you never converted into experience.
That's the phrase that got me. Working for free. If I spend 40 hours a week for money I never spend, I basically volunteered.
You volunteered for your heirs, maybe? Or for the government via estate taxes? But you didn't use it for your own life.
But here's my pushback, and I think a lot of listeners are thinking this right now. Life is unpredictable. I might plan to smooth my consumption, but what if I spend the money on a trip to Italy at 30, and then at 45 I get laid off, or the market crashes, or I get a divorce? That cushion I spent, I might need it for survival, not just for utility.
And that is the #1 criticism of the book. It feels a bit like YOLO economics.
Right.
But Perkins isn't reckless. He's very clear on this. He distinguishes between your survival number and your discretionary wealth.
Okay, that distinction is important. Tell me more.
He isn't saying spend your rent money on a concert. He's saying, first, you have to calculate what you need to not starve and not be homeless for the rest of your life. Secure that with annuities, insurance, a lockdown conservative portfolio. That is your floor.
Your survival threshold.
Exactly. But anything above that, that represents what he calls life credits. And if you hoard those life credits out of a generic fear of someday, you are wasting them. They expire.
And he has this concept of memory dividends. This is my favorite concept in the whole book. It sounds like a financial term, but it's pure emotion.
It's a brilliant mental model. Think of a memory like a stock that pays a dividend. When you have a massive experience, say that trip to Italy at age 30, you get the immediate joy of the trip. That's the initial investment.
Okay.
But then, for the next 50 years, every time you look at the photos, every time you tell the story at a dinner party, every time you reminisce with your partner about that amazing pasta, you get a dividend of happiness.
That's so true. The experience keeps paying out over and over.
Now, look at the math of it. If you take that trip at 30, you might collect that dividend for 60 years. If you wait until you are retired at 70 to take that trip, you only have maybe 10 or 15 years to collect those dividends. You have drastically reduced the total return on investment of that memory.
Wow. So delaying gratification isn't always a virtue. Sometimes it's just poor asset management. You're literally shortening the payout window of your own memory.
Exactly. And this connects right back to that utility decline we touched on earlier. There is a physical reality to aging that money cannot fix. The sources emphasize that money has diminishing returns as your body ages.
Right.
There are just things you physically cannot do at 80, no matter if you have $1 billion.
You can't hilly ski at 80. Well, I mean, maybe someone can, but it's a very bad idea.
It's a very, very bad idea. So Perkins asks, why are you saving your heli skiing money for age 80? It's a fundamental mismatch of resources and timing. You need to spend the money when it can actually buy the thing you want.
That leads us right into a broader economic picture. Because if everyone starts thinking this way, if we stop retiring at 65 and start living these multi-stage lives, the whole economy has to change. The Aranta report calls this the longevity economy.
And the numbers are just staggering. They project it to be an $8 trillion market by 2030. But we need to correct a common misconception here.
What's that?
When people hear silver economy or longevity economy, they immediately think of, adult diapers and nursing homes.
Right. They think of care, end-of-life stuff.
But that's only a tiny fraction of it.
Yeah.
The real money, the real growth, is in the active engagement of older adults. We are talking about tourism, education, beauty, wellness, financial services, and encore careers.
Encore careers. I like that term. It sounds so much more dignified than working past retirement.
It's the whole idea of retiring retirement. The concept of stopping work entirely at 65 is quickly becoming an anomaly. Partially because people need the money, yes, but also because of the health aspect.
Go on.
The NIH data is very clear on this. Total cessation of work often correlates with a rapid decline in cognitive function and physical health.
Use it or lose it.
It's literally use it or lose it.
Yeah.
So the new model is shifting gears. Maybe you leave your high-stress corporate executive job at 60, but instead of just playing golf 7 days a week, you become a consultant or a mentor, or you start a small business you've always dreamed of. You stay in the game.
The NIH report pointed out that older workers are a massive, undertapped pool of what they called cognitive capital.
Which makes perfect sense. They have decades of experience and wisdom.
But, and this brings us right back to our equation, you can only have an encore career if you have the health span.
100% correct. You cannot consult if you are battling unmanaged diabetes or cognitive decline. And the data is brutal on this point. Chronic illness is the primary driver of forced early retirement. This is a wealth destruction event.
Let's drill into that for a second. We usually think of getting sick as a health problem. You're saying it's fundamentally a wealth problem.
It is a catastrophic wealth event. If you are forced to retire at 55 because of a stroke or burnout or chronic pain, you lose your peak earning years.
55 to 65 is usually when people earn the most.
Exactly. You lose 10 years of compounding savings, and you start drawing down your assets 10 years earlier than you planned. That swing can cost a family millions of dollars in lifetime value.
So when I pay for a gym membership, or I buy the more expensive organic vegetables, or I pay out of pocket for that preventative MRI, I shouldn't look at that as spending.
No, you should look at it as maintaining the machinery that generates your wealth. Physical health is financial health.
It's an investment.
The NIH explicitly states this linkage. Investing in fitness extends your earning window. It's an insurance premium that pays you back by keeping the income factory, which is you open for business longer.
That is a huge mindset shift. I want to get into the stories now, because the theory is great. Multiply this, smooth that. But seeing it in real life is where it really clicks. Die with Zero has a couple of stories that just stuck with me. The first one is the author himself, Bill Perkins, and his 45th birthday.
Yes, the St. Bart's extravaganza.
This story completely triggered my irresponsible alarm when I first read it. Can you tell us what he did?
So Bill Perkins is wealthy, we have to acknowledge that up front, but the principle applies to any scale. For his 45th birthday, he decided to fly his closest friends and family to St. Bart's for a massive party. And he spent a significant percentage of his liquid net worth at the time. It wasn't just pocket change for him. It was a real chunk.
When most financial advisors would scream, they'd say, invest that. In 20 years, it will be double.
Of course. But Perkins did the math on the human side of the equation. He looked at his life. He was 45, he was healthy, his best friends were healthy and could travel. And crucially, his parents were still alive and mobile enough to enjoy it.
That's the key factor, isn't it? The parents.
It is. He realized he was at what you could call his peak net worth in terms of utility. If he waited until he was 60 to throw that party, sure, maybe he would have twice as much money. But his parents might be too frail to fly.
Or gone.
Or gone. His friends might have drifted apart or be dealing with their own health issues. The group dynamic would be different.
So he realized that $100,000 spent now bought a magical, once-in-a-lifetime family experience. $200,000 spent in 15 years might buy nothing, because the people wouldn't be there to enjoy it with him.
Exactly. He chose to decumulate, to spend down, to capture that memory dividend while the window was open. He realized that the biggest risk wasn't running out of money, the risk was running out of time with the people he loved.
That reframes the whole concept of risk completely. We worry about market risk, but we ignore mortality risk or frailty risk.
And then there is the story of Aaron and John, which is much, much heavier.
Yeah, this one was tough to read.
This story strips away the billionaire party vibe and gets to the absolute core of the philosophy. John was a regular guy who was diagnosed with a rare aggressive cancer. He and his wife Erin were savers. They were doing everything right by the traditional playbook.
Saving for a retirement that suddenly wasn't going to happen?
Exactly. When the diagnosis came, they had to make a radical pivot. They realized that saving for age 65 was now a mathematical absurdity. The timeline had collapsed. They had to spend now.
So what did they do?
They stopped working as much. They drained some of their savings accounts. They took the trips they always said they'd take someday. They prioritized family time immediately. They basically compressed a lifetime of memories into a few short years.
It sounds tragic, and it is, but in the context of the book, it was actually framed as a victory, because they didn't leave that utility on the table. They used their resources to make John's life better while he actually had it.
And the lesson for the listener, for all of us, is that we are all Aaron and John. We just don't have the diagnosis yet. Life is finite. We pretend it isn't, but it is. And this is where Perkins introduces the idea of time bucketing.
Time bucketing. Okay, explain that.
It's the idea that certain experiences belong in certain buckets of time. We all tend to have a bucket list, which is just this vague, undated list of things to do before we die.
Yes.
But time bucketing requires you to be specific and slot those experiences into age ranges. If you want to hike the Appalachian Trail, that probably belongs in the 20 to 40 bucket. If you put it in the 60 to 80 bucket, the probability of it happening drops to near zero.
It forces you to face the reality of your own biology.
It does. It forces you to realize that your 30s are a finite resource. Once they are gone, you can never spend money as a 30-year-old again. You can spend it as a 40-year-old, but the menu of available options is different.
There is one more concept from the book that I think is the most controversial, but also maybe the most practical for parents, the whole inheritance conversation.
The wait until 60 mistake.
I feel like this is the default setting for our entire society. Parents hoard the money until they die, the kids inherit it, everyone is sad, but suddenly rich.
But look at the data. With lifespans increasing, parents are living to 85, 90, 95. That means their children are inheriting the money when they are 60 or 65 years old.
And at 60, you're usually fine. You're established, the kids are grown, the house might be paid off. You're at your own peak net worth.
The marginal utility of that money is low. You don't need it in the same way. But rewind 30 years. When were those same kids really struggling?
When they were 30, trying to buy a house in this market, trying to pay for daycare, trying to start a business.
Precisely. Die with zero advocates for giving assets to children, or to charity for that matter, when they are between 26 and 35. This is the peak utility window.
So the same amount of money has a different impact depending on when it's given.
A vastly different impact. Let's say it's $50,000. That can change the entire trajectory of a life at 30. It can be a down payment, seed capital for a business, a way to avoid student debt. It acts as a catalyst. At 60, it's just a nice top-up to an already full account.
But the psychological barrier there is huge. For the parent, giving that money away at 55 or 60 feels so unsafe. What if I need it later for a nursing home?
It requires trust. And it absolutely requires that survival number calculation we talked about earlier. You have to secure your own oxygen mask first. But Perkins argues that seeing your children thrive because of your help while you are alive is a far greater emotional reward than having them thank your tombstone.
A living legacy. I love that phrase. Okay, we have covered a ton of ground here. We've done the math, the biology, the philosophy. Now I want to get tactical. For the listener driving to work or on the treadmill right now, who wants to apply this Wealthnetic approach? What do they actually do?
I think we can boil this down to 4 really actionable takeaways from the source stack.
All right, let's go. Tip number 1.
Tip 1, replace your bucket list with a time bucket plan.
Okay, so how do we physically do this? Spreadsheet. Piece of paper.
Get a piece of paper, a whiteboard, whatever works. Draw a timeline of your life in 5-year increments. 30-35, 35-40, all the way to 90+.
Okay, I've got the timeline in my head.
Now, take your goals, your dreams, your bucket list items, and slot them into those buckets. And be ruthless about the biology. If you want to ski the Alps, put it in the 30s or 40s bucket. If you want to learn to paint, maybe that can go anywhere. If you want to go on a luxury world cruise.
That might fit nicely in the 70s bucket.
Exactly. What happens when you see it on paper is you realize a sense of urgency. You realize that the window for skiing in the Alps is maybe only 10 or 15 years wide. If you miss it, you don't just move it to the right. You might have to delete it. It forces you to act now because you see that the slots are finite.
I love that. It kills procrastination. Okay, what's tip number 2?
Tip 2, invest in your biological age like it's a startup.
This goes right back to the longevity equation.
Yes. Stop viewing health costs as losses or expenses. They are capital investments in your primary asset, you. The NIH suggests specific preventative maintenance. We aren't just talking about a yearly physical. We're talking about comprehensive blood panels, early screenings for heart disease like a calcium score, and crucially maintaining muscle mass.
Muscle mass, why that specifically?
It is the #1 correlate for longevity and independence in older adults. Lift heavy things. Do resistance training. Treat your gym time like you treat your investment portfolio review. You are building equity in your body. If you are frail, your wealth span is irrelevant.
So leg day is actually asset protection day.
I am absolutely stealing that, yes.
All right, tip number 3. This is for the nervous savers like me.
Tip 3, calculate your survival number, then spend the rest.
This is the permission slip to live.
It is, but you need to earn it by doing the work first. You need to know your number. How much do you need to cover basic housing, food, and healthcare until age 95 or 100? Calculate it conservatively. Then secure it. Use annuities, use bonds, use insurance products, whatever it takes.
You lock down the floor so you can't fall through?
Once the floor is locked, everything above that is for living. If you have a surplus and your floor is secure, you have a moral obligation to your own life to convert that money into memory dividends. Stop hoarding the surplus out of fear.
That is incredibly liberating. It removes the guilt from spending. And finally, tip number 4.
Tip 4, give while you're alive.
The inheritance piece.
Don't wait until the will is read. Identify that high-impact window for your beneficiaries. If you have kids, look at when they will be 28 to 35. Plan to transfer some wealth then, when it can change their lives.
And have a conversation with them.
Absolutely. You have to. Tell them, I'm helping you with a down payment now, so don't expect a massive windfall when I die. It clarifies expectations for everyone, and it maximizes the utility of the money.
So bringing it all home, we started this deep dive with mice living 25% longer. And we ended with giving money to our kids. What is the through line here?
The through line is intention. The longevity equation, $1 approx age times WA, tells us that living a long time is a multiplier effect. It only works if all the pieces are strong. You can't just hack the biology and ignore the finance.
And you can't just hoard the cash and ignore the body.
Exactly. And you can't just wait for the end to figure it all out.
It's about integration. Active, conscious integration.
It is. We need to stop hoping for a long life and start strategizing for a deep and full life. The goal isn't to reach the finish line with a full tank of gas. The goal is to slide in sideways, totally worn out, loudly proclaiming, "Wow, what a ride."
I love that image. And I want to leave the listeners with that quote from JFK, which the Milken Report cited. It just sums this all up so perfectly. He said, "It is not enough for a great nation merely to add to the years of life. Our object also must be to add new life to those years."
That is the challenge for society and for every single one of us individually.
So, to our listeners, what are you doing today to add life to your years? Are you banking memories or just banking dollars?
It's a provocative question. I really hope they take some time to find the answer for themselves.
Thank you all for listening to this deep dive. If you want to radically rethink your saving strategy, I highly recommend you pick up a copy of Die with Zero. It will scare you, but in a really good way. And please subscribe to the Wealthnetic channel for more insights on mastering the currency of life. We'll see you in the next deep dive.
Stay healthy and spend wisely.